Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi to all Malaysians and good evening to our speaker. Welcome to Coffee and Talk with TVI. Thank you and congratulations for joining us today. Today is the 20th of June 2021. For today's program, we just be less formal. Let's enjoy our Sunday morning with a cup of coffee and stay tuned with us. Okey, program pada pagi ini adalah lebih santai, lebih relax dan untuk makluman semua, program akan dijalankan dalam dua bahasa. So, to start the session, I would like to invite Al-Fadil Ustaz Fazli Aizam bin Fawi to lead the doa for the Muslim, and for others, you can make your own prayers.
Boleh dengar? A'udzubillahi Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, bagimu pujian-pujian, Engkaulah penguasa langit dan bumi serta bendaharaan antara kedua-duanya. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Kami merapatkan kesyukuran di atas keizinamu untuk kami berhimpun pada pagi ini di dalam program Coffee and Talk with TBI, The Sky Time. Mudah-mudahan program ini dipenuhi dengan keberkatan dan rahmat-Mu darimu, dari awal hingga akhirnya. Justru berkatilah pertemuan kami, berkatilah jua usaha-usaha kami. Ilhamkanlah dalam fikiran dan minda kami idea-idea yang bernas, pandangan-pandangan yang jelas dan keputusan-keputusan yang waras. Kurniakanlah kepada kami limpahan ilmu yang berguna dan kefahaman yang benar. Satukanlah hati-hati kami, Ya Allah. Eratkanlah silaturahim antara kami, Ya Allah. Padukanlah tenaga dan usaha kami untuk memartabatkan pendidikan bangsa secara bersama demi mencapai kecemerlangan dan kegemilangan pendidikan. Allahumma inni a'udzubika minal barati wal jununi wal juzami wa min sayyil asqam. Ya Allah, lindungilah kami, keluarga kami, anak-anak kami, jiran tetangga kami dan negara kami dan seluruh dunia daripada wabak COVID-19 ini, Ya Allah. Sembuhkanlah mereka yang telah dijangkiti, sembuhkanlah mereka yang sedang dirawat, Ya Allah. Berikanlah kekuatan dan kesabaran kepada barisan hadapan kami yang sedang bertukar lumus berjuang merawat pesakit-pesakit dan memerangi wabak ini, Ya Allah. Ya Hanan, Ya Manan, sesungguhnya kami amat sedih dengan apa yang menimpa kami ini, Ya Allah. Hanyalah Engkau yang Maha Berkuasa. Berikanlah kami kekuatan, Ya Allah. Berilah keupayaan agar kami menghadapi semua ini. Semoga kami dapat memperbaiki kekurangan, kelemahan kami, Ya Allah. Semoga dan hikmah sebalik ujian ini, semoga semakin kami dapat meningkatkan keimanan dan ketakwaan kami kepadamu, Ya Allah. Allahumma ya alim wa ya khabir. Jadikanlah kami, Ya Allah, dari kalangan hamba-hamba-Mu yang taat dan bersyukur. Jauhilah kami, Ya Allah, dari melanggar perintah-Mu. Kurniakanlah apa kiranya kepada kami kesihatan yang berpanjangan, kesejahteraan yang sempurna, fikiran yang baik, minda yang cergas, rezeki yang halal, zuriat dan generasi yang beriman, serta segala kebaikan di dunia maupun di akhirat. Allahumma ja'al jama'ana hadza jam'an marhuma wa tafarraqna min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Ustaz, for the doa recitation. Okay, now let me introduce myself. It's me, Diana, the moderator for today. I am a teacher of the visually impaired children at Sekolah Kebangsaan Kelang in the state of Selangor, Malaysia. And a little bit about myself. This is my first school since I graduated from Institut Pendidikan Guru, Campus Ilmu Khas, a teacher's college in Kuala Lumpur. So this is my 10th year of teaching. So for today, I'm not going to be a solo moderator. I have a partner with me. So I think let me pass the mic so she could introduce herself.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Amy. Hi Stacy. Good to meet you. And a little bit about myself. After I graduated from a local university, um, then I did 1 year teaching course in the same college as Diana. This is my 12 years of teaching, and SK Klang is my third school. Over to you, Diana.
Alright, thank you Cikgu Amy. Jadi untuk makluman semua, Cikgu Amy merupakan salah seorang guru yang mengalami kehilangan penglihatan di sekolah kami. Okay, so our program this morning, Coffee and Talk with TVI, with the theme Discuss the Limit, is a continuous program that we initiate to empower the education for the young learners with visual impairment. Our focus for today's sessions are sensory motor development, Braille skills, and accessibility tools. And fortunately, on this blissful Sunday, we have an outstanding person, a teacher from the United States, to share her knowledge on these three components. Alright, so the reason why we decided to choose the sky's the limit as our theme, it is because we know that in education, there is no border. There is no time border, there is no physical border. So we have to take on learning every day. There will be something new, so we have to reform the strategies to meet our children's needs in order to maximize their potential. Okay, so Cikgu Amy, in your opinion, how do this program would benefit others?
Yeah, primarily we also want to encourage parents to get involved in their children education. As we know, parents are the main stakeholder of every child's education because they exert the major influence on the development of a child from birth to maturity. Over to you.
Alright, thank you.
Okay. Besides that, sorry, Diana.
Okay.
Besides that, I think it is also important for teachers and parents to empower each other, so that to develop the growth of the children.
Alright, thank you
That's
Cikgu Amy. Okay, thank you. Jadi saya apa yang Cikgu Amy cuba sampaikan, parents juga boleh mendapat benefits yang sangat besar melalui program kami, dan sememangnya ibu bapa dan guru merupakan dua pihak yang memainkan peranan penting dalam pendidikan kanak-kanak. Okay, Cikgu Amy, I'm so excited to get to our speaker, but I think we have something first.
Okay, before we get to our speaker, I would like to invite SK Klang newly appointed headmistress, Madam Rosana Adam, to say a few words. Dipersilakan, Puan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening to our guests and morning to all attendees. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. We are pleased and honored to welcome Mrs. Chambers, our speaker, for willing to give up some of her time to share her knowledges and experiences as a teacher of visually impaired children in Copper, Texas, United States. It is a first and hopefully will not be the last time this kind of event able to be carried out. Congratulations to TPKI SK Klang teachers and staff for the effort to make this event happen, especially Ms. Diana for initiating today's event. To all staff and parents of SK Klang, I hope at the end of the event, all of us will gain or learn something new, then motivate, encourage, and put us up to work for our children's growth. Lastly, enjoy the sharing till the end of the event. And to Mrs. Chamber, Thank you in advance for your kind sharing. Your expertise is very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Madam Rosanna. Okay, without any further delay, I would like to welcome Mrs. Stacey Chambers, a teacher of the visually impaired in Texas, United States. Hi, hello, how are you? Apa khabar?
Selamat pagi. I'm so grateful and honored to be here. I just think it's incredible to have the opportunity to share and learn from teachers in so many different countries. And I'm honored to have been asked to share about my role from my corner of the world. I'm going to share my presentation. I have a slideshow here that I will share afterwards for anybody interested. So I'm going to go ahead and start that now.
No, not yet.
Oh, not yet.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. I think we have a little housekeeping.
Okay.
First. Okay. So a little housekeeping for the attendees before we get started. Firstly, our session is divided to 3 segments. We'll start with sensory motor, followed by Braille learning, and then the last one is accessibilities. A Q&A session should be conducted after the last segment. And priorly, if there are any questions related to our session, you are welcome to post in chat during the presentation. Jadi sedikit makluman sebelum kita memulakan majlis, perkongsian pada pagi ini akan dibahagikan kepada 3 segmen. Dimulakan dengan perkembangan sensory motor, diikuti dengan Braille, dan yang ketiga adalah accessibility. Slot Q&A akan dijalankan selepas selesai segmen yang ketiga. Sebarang persoalan boleh diajukan sama ada dalam bahasa Melayu atau bahasa Inggeris di ruangan komen. Okay, without further ado, let's get straight to the content. Alright, Cikgu Amy, what do we have first?
Okay. First, we want to move on to the topic about sensory motor. Okay, in sensory motor, pre-reading usually begin with tactile discrimination activities such as line tracing and shapes recognition to warm the fingers up. To prepare visually impaired children for reading, different area of readiness should be addressed with adequate sensory motor instrumental method. And I think it's not just that, but it's more than what I just said. So Miss Stacy, hello. Okay, we would like to have your thought on how important it is sensory motor training to the visually impaired students, and also what are the strategy that you use to enhance their skills?
Yes, and would you like me to share my PowerPoint at this point to show some of my slides on this topic?
Yeah, sure, carry on.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share.
Yeah.
I have a few things here. As it's loading, I will say I totally agree with you that our sensory motor learning is the perfect place to begin with this session, because sensory motor learning is really the beginning of all learning for children. Piaget is one of the fathers of child development and cognitive development, and he explains sensory motor learning as exploration using senses and acting systems to gain knowledge. This is how we learn about everything in our environment and the people and objects around us. And it's so incredibly important as we teach students with visual impairments and other sensory impairments that we strategically think about the ways that we teach exploration, and understanding of the world around us. From what I've learned, there are 3 different areas of sensory motor skill development that can help our children be prepared for future learning. And let me step back just a bit in regard to Piaget. And when he describes a sensory motor level learner, he's primarily talking about a learner who is at a 0 to 2-year-old age development cognitively. So we can think about this with our very young learners, our babies and toddlers. We can also think about it in regard to our students with additional disabilities who are cognitively functioning at 0 to 2. Sometimes learners with a visual impairment may be cognitively functioning beyond this, but have some holes in development and need further development in their sensory motor learning. So I'm going to touch on the 3 areas that we think about and the 3 areas that we need to make sure that all of our learners have in their ability to explore the world around them. The first area is attention. So it seems very basic, but really learning to pay attention to sensory input is a skill and a very important one. So some of the strategies that we want to use to make sure that our learner is paying attention is to use very motivating sensory materials. We want to make sure that we have materials that that particular student finds engaging and exciting to attend to. We also want to make sure that we reduce all extra distractions, whether that be extra visual distractions or auditory distractions, because we want our learner to be able to have the best opportunity to maintain their engagement and attention on the sensory object. And we also want to start small. We want to work up to greater lengths of attention. I have a picture of a light box. This is a strategy we use for some students who are very attracted and engaged by light. And so we can present objects on a light box to help to maintain and grow their attention with a sensory object. The next skill that we always want to build upon is the learner's ability to explore objects. Once they're able to maintain attention, we need to teach them to explore, because this doesn't always come naturally, especially if you don't have vision in that gives you the opportunity to observe how other people are exploring. This is something as a teacher or a parent we can teach the child. So we can teach them how to squeeze objects, bang objects, touch, rub, even mouth objects. This is something that is very important for children to do so that they can learn all the sensory qualities of an object and begin to form concepts that will help create understanding of the world around them. One of the ways that we can do this is through a strategy we call tactile modeling. And this is a method where we can show a child with hand under hand modeling of how to explore an object, whether that be squeezing a ball or ringing a bell. The child can learn from our tactile model how to explore objects. And I always put this on here, but including motivating objects is still very important for teaching exploration, because we want the child to be excited to explore, and every child is different. So getting to know your child and your learner and what is exciting for them is still incredibly important. The next level of sensory motor skill development is function of objects. So as children learn to pay attention and explore objects, the next skill is to really understand what that object is for and what its purposeful use is. And so we can do this by strategic and predictable routines that teach a child what the object is for. This isn't something a child may be able to observe others doing. And so we need to be very intentional about the way we approach that. So I wanted to share just a few things in regard to that and some resources that I have found to be very helpful. I have been incredibly blessed to have the opportunity to work closely with an incredible mentor. Her name is Millie Smith, and she is an expert in the field of students with visual impairments and additional disabilities. So her wheelhouse is working with students in the sensory motor level of development. She wrote the Sensory Learning Kit, which I've linked here. It's a whole book and curriculum for assessing and implementing strategies for a sensory motor level learner. It talks all about how we know what level that child is at and what skills we can teach them and how. And so I have learned from this strategy and these tools so much. I had the opportunity for Millie Smith to come to my district and work with my team. And we actually were able to conduct some research and published an article in the Journal of Visual Impairment and Blindness that really specifically talks about how to use routines with everyday objects for a sensory motor level learner in order to increase their ability to perceive objects. And I'm so excited to share the link as well here that you can access that article. Millie also helps monthly during the school year to write, in conjunction with me and my team, a sensory motor spotlight newsletter that really talks about how we put these practices into play with our learners every day. And some of the things that we share in here are the assessment tools that we use. We have video examples of routines and how we collaborate with parents to work on these strategies at school and at home. I'd like to share just a quick video of an example of what a lesson with a student looks like when we're working on these sensory motor strategies. And there's a whole bank of videos on the American Printing House for the Blind YouTube website. And one of the ones I want to share today is about Adam. Adam is a learner who was very good at keeping his attention to objects, but didn't have a lot of skills when it came to exploration. And so this is just an example. I'm going to just show a clip of this video that is Adam doing the routine. I hope you all are able to hear it. And you guys let me know if you're not able to hear the words.
Okay, right. Sure.
Can you hear it?
No, no
Okay.
any audio sound.
Okay, I'll share the audio sound. So Adam is sitting with his
Okay,
teacher.
without audio.
Okay.
But it is okay if without the audio.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I tear up.
Okay. The teacher is working with him with a large squishy ball, and she's taking the time to show him the ball and model for him how to engage with the ball. Okay, I'll pause there. I mainly wanted to show the link in the site. We have several videos that demonstrate different strategies we use for our sensory motor learners with interaction with objects, in teaching exploration strategies and building on that to then teach the function of objects. So I love these resources through the American Printing House for the Blind, and I'm grateful to have been able to be a partner in some of these tools. And just before we close on this topic, just wanted to share just some overview of tips for parents and teachers in regard for sensory motor learning. My main thing that I've already mentioned is just having a variety of motivating sensory materials. You want to have objects that make sound, that have a variety of texture and qualities. And you really want to pay attention to what that child in particular likes and what they don't like. You want to always use a hand under hand modeling strategy rather than grabbing the child's hand or arm to interact, because you want them to have trust and willingness to explore. And the last thing is that you always want to work, if possible, for the child to be able to have visual fixation on the object and a tactile exploration of the object simultaneously if the child does have some degree of vision. The use of multi-sensory exploration really helps to build a more coherent understanding of objects that will lead them to the future skills they need. So we can pause there in regard to the sensory motor section. Is there anything else that you guys would like me to address or questions you have on this area?
Yeah, I'm just interested that just now you say there's a technique where the children can squeeze, can is the resources that you mentioned stated that what materials are suitable for those activities. I'm just asking so that the parents know and they can do the activity at home with their children.
Yes. Are you talking specifically about an activity that matches a certain type of exploration?
Yes, about the exploration. Yes.
Yes. So that the sensory learning kit materials, if you follow the link, I'm pretty sure one of those, if not, I'll update it. There's actually a free guidebook that's available from the American Printing House for the Blind, and it does give examples of several different types of routines that either a parent or a teacher can do to help promote that exploration with their child. So I love that resource. I think it's great for teachers and for parents.
That's great. Thank you. Anyway, you got anything to ask, Diana? Diana?
So far, no, but it's okay. So is that all for sensory motor development?
On my part, yes.
All right. Okay. So can you share a bit of what would you suggest for the parents to help their children at home in terms of sensory motor?
Yes, my main tips for parents are mainly to understand the value of taking the time to spend time with their child interacting with an object, and to allow them at their own pace, possibly with some modeling hand under hand, to explore that object and all the qualities that that object has. Something that we can do is present the object visually, auditorily, present it to them tactily with some support, and really give them the time to explore. We want to take note of the things that they don't like, and we don't want to force that either. But the more hands-on experience that that child has with a variety of objects, the better understanding that they're going to have about things around them. The more the child learns that things are interesting and they want to learn more about them, that is when they can continue along that those stages of development and begin to move more towards that pre-operational stage where they're learning symbolic understanding and greater function of a variety of objects. So the basic thing that we can provide our learners at the very early stages is just that the world is interesting and there are objects out there that we want to explore and learn more about.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the segment one. So that's all for the segment one. Okay. So now I think we can move to our second segment, Braille learning for young learners. So I have the first question here. First, what is the most common milestone of Braille proficiency among the blind children without additional disability in the States?
Okay, I have a few things to share here as well, so I'll pull up the PowerPoint again. We have several milestones that we love to help support our learners through. Let's see, is it showing? Okay. The first milestone that we want to focus on for our learners that are going to be learning Braille are the mechanical skills that that child will need to physically be able to interact with the Braille and the Braille writing tools. And so this involves a child's finger dexterity, their wrist flexibility, the ability to touch things with a light finger touch, and the ability to have tactile perception and discrimination skills. So that means to be able to determine just by touch that things are the same or that they're different. And so at these very early stages, I love to work on skills like this with really fun, engaging objects like Play-Doh or stringing, beads on a string, anything that is going to build up that finger strength and dexterity in a fun way. As we begin to build on these skills, we can really begin thinking about introducing those emerging Braille skills. I believe some of the things that you need to work on in this area would be understanding of the Braille cell, just basically understanding that there are 6 dots that make up a cell, understanding the way that they are aligned. Some of the ways that we do this are something really simple you might have at home, like a muffin tin with 6 openings that you can use to demonstrate what a Braille cell looks like. I have a picture here of something that we call a Braille swing cell that has little pegs that come in and out that can be used to demonstrate a Braille cell. So just really a very basic understanding that Braille includes 6 dots, and we have to know what those 6 dots are and the configurations of those dots make a Braille letter. We can begin introducing the Braille alphabet in fun, engaging ways. I like starting with letters that are really different from one another and easy to pick out, like the letter G or the letter L, or choosing the letter that maybe is the beginning of their name. So starting really simple and making it fun and meaningful. Another skill is learning to track across a line from left to right. You can use Braille figures across lines to track, or you can use other things like a pipe cleaner or a piece of fabric. You want the child to become familiar staying with 2 hands across the line from left to right. That's a really basic skill they can begin to learn. You want to, during this emerging skills session and stage, you want to introduce the Braille writer, basically understanding that it's for writing Braille, that it has many parts, learning how to put paper in with some assistance, even beginning to, we call it just scribble on the Braille writer, banging and touching keys and understanding its purpose is a very important emerging Braille skill. And of course, environmental exposure to Braille. So just having Braille books in the home, even at a very early age, is important. You can use a Braille labeler to label items around the home. And that's also something that we do in the classroom for our very young learners. We want children to understand that the Braille has meaning and it's something that they can use to gain information about the world around them. Once they have these basic skills, we can move on to the next level, which is really learning the code. So you're wanting to really make sure children can read words with Braille letters combined and with contractions, and also begin those stages of writing. And of course, we always just want to make it really fun. As a teacher, this is one of the things I love about my job the most, because I often get to work one-on-one with the learner. And so I can really tailor the lesson to something that that child enjoys and make it, really fun games or topics of interest that are fun for that child. As we have learned the code, the next milestone would be developing Braille fluency. So There are strategies that can be used that are found in other reading fluencies and transferred to our Braille code. And those are things like repeated readings, so reading the same text over and over. Choral readings, so that might be me as a teacher or you as a parent reading the text out loud while the child follows along. You also want to have access to a variety of types of Braille materials, whether that be nonfiction or fiction, poetry, jokes, lots of different types of Braille for that child to read. And you want to read often. This is something I always want to encourage parents, is that the Braille literacy does not come at school alone, that it really takes a partnership and it takes lots and lots of reading outside of school. Some of the biggest barriers that we face with Braille instruction are time. It does take a lot of time to learn the Braille code and build that fluency. So it's important as teachers that we make that a priority as we structure the child's day. And it's important that parents do partner and make the time outside of school to practice. Another barrier that we can face is a lack of materials. Sometimes it's hard for parents to find things that are in Braille or have the tools that they need at home to support that. So as a teacher, I'm always working to find those tools and make sure that our parents have access to it as well. And lastly, it's motivation. I think sometimes it can be frustrating at first for a child if they don't feel confident or they think it's boring. And so again, I think it's so important as a teacher that we have the opportunity to make it fun and make it meaningful and design a lesson that is going to be engaging for that child. I'll share these resources that hopefully will be helpful to you. These are things that I find really important in my Braille instruction practice. I have an article here that's called Improving Braille Fluency, and these are some research-based strategies for building fluency in Braille, some of which I mentioned earlier. The second article is called our ABC Braille Study. It's a research study that was done that discusses the pros and cons of using contracted versus uncontracted Braille with our learners from the beginning. And personally, I lean towards using contractions as early on as possible. The next two are two assessments that I use as I'm training students to read Braille. The first is a Braille assessment checklist. And so this is just a great free tool that gives you the opportunity to track what letters and contractions and punctuation that child learns so that you can make sure you're strategically building upon that over time. And the Jerry Johns Reading Inventory is a tool that demonstrates what reading level that child is on compared to those who read print. And so you're using texts that are leveled, and it's available in Braille from the American Printing House for the Blind. I'm not sure if you have that available to you. And the last article is just some strategies for teaching Braille, just some really great fun ideas that you can use for building fun, engaging lessons. I also have some tips for parents. Again, we just want to read as often as possible. Any opportunity my child has to get their fingers on some Braille, I think is a great opportunity. So we want to find those opportunities when we can. I would suggest parents, if at all possible, find ways to have access to those Braille materials, the Braille writer, paper at home. You can Braille a grocery list, or you write a thank you note to a friend. Any opportunity to increase those fluency opportunities is really important. Another tip for parents would be to build overall comprehension just by talking about what you're reading, whether that's something the child is reading in Braille, that you're reading to your child, or a book you're listening to, really making sure that children are thinking about what they're listening or what they're reading and it's making sense. And lastly, I think this is a super important strategy for a parent or for a teacher, is that we really need to make sure we're building our child's understanding of concepts every day through exposure to real experiences with objects in the kitchen or outside in nature or at the grocery store, so that when they're reading, the things they're reading about make sense. We want to make sure that their level of understanding about concepts in the world match their level of reading ability at the same time. So that's what I have in regard to our Braille literacy and kind of how I approach it in terms of instruction, milestones, and assessment. So I'm happy to take any questions on this area as well.
All right, so I have a question here. We know that some blind children, they have poor sensory motor development and with additional disabilities. So how do you think it might affect Braille learning?
Learners with additional disabilities, is that in terms of Braille? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting conversation. You know, for me, every child is so different, what their skill level is, what their abilities are, what those disabilities are in terms of, you know, is it a physical disability or is it a cognitive disability or both? And so for me, no matter what, the biggest and most important piece is going to be that assessment piece. We need to know what that child is capable of, where they're at, so that we know how to build over time. The skills that I mentioned in the sensory motor learning area are really important prerequisites so that the child is prepared for learning Braille when it comes. So I think building those sensory motor skills are the stepping stones to being able to engage in the Braille learning.
All right.
Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, so you are having your cup of coffee. All right. So
I am. It's decaf since it's almost my bedtime, but since it was a coffee talk, I thought I should bring it.
All right. Okay. Okay. Can you suggest? We know that besides Braille symbols, actually we have some kind of other that means a type of alternative that can be used for the blind children that cannot read Braille symbols. Maybe can you come up with any alternative that can replace the Braille symbols?
Okay, yes. So what we use if the child is unable to access the Braille symbols, we have a few options. One of the ones that I always start with, no matter what, for those very young or children that are functioning kind of at that 0 to 2, would be the whole object. I love starting with a whole object to be able to learn to represent an object with an activity. So for example, we like to use a fork, for example, or a spoon to represent when it's time to eat. And so we can begin to associate a whole object with an activity. And that is a great way to begin the symbolic understanding. And once the child shows that they're understanding those symbolic situations and over a variety of objects and activities, we can then pare back and maybe use part of the object and potentially even move to a picture or a symbol if the child is able to discriminate that. So for me, I always like to start whole and begin to taper back into part and then symbol. So actually, if I'm not sure if you guys have explored the American Printing House for the Blind website and if any of those tools are available to you, but they also have a tactile communications kit on that website, and it does have a variety of tactile symbols that are used mainly to represent objects, activities, daily schedule, and calendar as a way of communication, both expressive and receptively.
Okay, so in terms of the assessment, we know that assessment is one of the important part of teaching. So just now you mentioned about Braille assessment checklist. Can you explain more about that checklist? Is it just for a Braille reading in terms of the pace of Braille reading, or it includes the comprehension skill?
The Braille checklist, the one I linked there, is just Braille symbols. It's basically, as a teacher, I always have it so that when I feel a learner has mastered a specific symbol, I can keep track of that over time. It helps me when I'm creating a goal and basically to monitor progress on the code. The Jerry Johns Reading Inventory is a more comprehensive assessment that comes in print and Braille and large print. And it has a reading passage. It has a word list and a reading passage and comprehension questions. So you can take scores on simply, fluency in decoding words and passages, as well as the comprehension. I also actually love to use that inventory for a listening comprehension level as well. That helps me when making recommendations about literacy and just also skills that we might want to work on for that child, because listening skills are important as well.
All right. So, how regular do you assess your students' Braille, their Braille competency?
So, I think again, it also depends on the student. Right now, I have one child that has learned Braille since he was 3. And we began introducing Braille, and he only uses Braille. For him, I did quite a lot of assessments. It was important to me, since that was his primary learning media, that I make sure that he was on target as possible. Especially in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, his teachers were continually assessing all of the students' reading level. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing that as well, or his teacher had access to the Braille versions of those assessments. So I would say 2 to 3 times a year for those comprehensive reading assessments, but ongoing, probably every few weeks, informally through the checklists. For my other learners, who I have a few that are learning Braille as a secondary learning strategy, and they're not a full-time Braille reader, so I don't necessarily assess at the same urgency. My main goal is that they're able to pick up all of the code, and that we're maintaining progress as needed, since it's not as urgent of a priority.
All right. Okay. So, so how do you move? So when you are teaching grade 1 Braille, and then how do you move to grade 2? Is it
yes?
Right,
so grade 2. Yes. So I actually linked, this is sort of an interesting topic, and right now there's a lot of conversations about it. Different teachers do different things. There's a few different thoughts behind that. The ABC Braille study that I attached really goes into some research that was done about 10 years ago, but compares teaching grade 1 first and then grade 2, or teaching grade 2 right from the beginning. And that study shows that teaching grade 2 from the beginning has better outcomes for the learners that were in the study. That's typically where I tend to be. I like to teach the alphabet. And as I teach the alphabet, I've also taught the alphabet whole word that's associated with that letter. And from there, I build in contractions as they tend to come. One of the tools I use is a curriculum called the Patterns curriculum, and it introduces letters and words and contractions in grade 2 all at the same time. And so that's really worked well for me. I found that students feel really successful with the grade 2 because they're able to read whole words in a very basic way. The main thing I always have to think about, though, is making sure that the students understand the spelling behind all of those contractions in grade 2, so that they're building their spelling skills along with those contractions.
All right. So, so you have a wide range of experience with your blind children. So, at what age your student usually can master grade 1 and grade 2? How old they are?
Okay, so I mean, obviously it depends on the student. I've had students master, and by master, I would say understand or know a majority of the grade 2 contractions by second grade. And that's really a goal. In third grade, that's when our state testing begins, and our children really need to be able to have a good amount of fluency for reading. So I think shooting by then for sure would be great.
All right, so for the Braille reading, I have the last one here. I learned that in the state test tournament that's called Braille Challenge. Could you tell a bit about the challenge?
Yes, I love the Braille Challenge. We were able to participate this year with one of my students. It was virtual, but it was still really neat. I love the opportunity for children to have something to look forward to, something as a motivator to build those Braille skills. And so this year, well, every year that they do it, they provide tests for a child in a few different formats depending on their age. Sometimes it includes a reading with comprehension. There's also a tactile diagram test that they're given. So they've got their Braille materials and they have to answer questions about it. And there's also a grammar writing task where they're having to find mistakes in the writing. There's also one where they listen to a passage and they have to write the passage at the same time, trying to do that with no mistakes. So the test is actually pretty challenging for most of the students, but it's a great thing to work towards. They score all the tests and then they find regional winners to go compete at a higher level. So it's really, really a neat opportunity for our students to have something to compete in with these skills and work towards, and just to see other learners that are really excelling. So it's a really neat program.
All right, so that sounds great. I think we can work on that too in Malaysia. Okay, I think that's all for Braille learning. We have actually, I can see here we have a lot of questions for our Q&A later. Okay, so let's move to the next segment. Cikgu Amy, what do we have next? Cikgu Amy, could you please unmute your mic?
Sorry for the error. Okay, let us focus our eyes on the screen. I think there will be a video played by Cikgu Azam. So let's see.
I'm 10 years old. I'm studying in SK Clan Standard 4. I would like to ask, what are the technologies, gadgets, computer software or apps to help visual impaired young learners in education in US? Apakah teknologi peralatan komputer perisian atau apps yang boleh membantu budak-budak bermasalah penglihatan dalam sektor pembelajaran di US? Thank you. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you. There's our student Justin. He is asking question related to the our third topic. So let's move on. Accessibility for visually impaired really make life easier for us, because I am myself also visually impaired. And in education, accessibility tools are huge to increase equal opportunity for visually impaired children to succeed. And in our conversation that day, Stacy, I heard, if I'm not mistaken, that you said you serve quite a large range age of students. I think from a single digit age, to 22 years old, right?
Yes.
So I salute you for that. And we just want to know. I think I assume that you must have used a lot of these accessibility tools in your teaching to cater for the needs for the students' needs. And can you share what tools are you using? What accessibility tools are you using, including the electronic or non-electronic, and what are the challenges that you face in the process?
Sure. Let me share my screen again here. I really believe in teaching students to use a variety of accessibility tools from a young age. And so I thought I would share a few of my favorites that I use all the time and as much as possible. The first one is an abacus. When I first started learning, I thought I don't really see the point of an abacus because there's so many other tools and calculators and technology out there, but it has grown to be one of my favorite tools and most valuable tools for some of my learners with visual impairments. And I love it because it's a way for them to learn those mathematical concepts like place value and all of the operations from a very young age, just from counting all the way to long division. So I always make sure that my students have the foundational skills with the abacus before we move on to using any kind of calculation device. So I would have to say that honestly, that's one of my very favorite tools. Obviously, the Braille writer, I couldn't leave it out. It's one of my favorite tools, specifically just in the immediate production of Braille for a child and what power that brings. So I definitely encourage at the earliest age possible for children to get their hands on a Braille writer. We love the Perkins Braille writer here in the US. Once they have those foundational skills of using a Braille writer, being able to keep their fingers on the correct keys, I then like to introduce an electronic Braille writer. They did not have these when I first started teaching, and this has been a game changer for my students, especially as they begin to use an iPad or a laptop and have the ability to use Braille keys for input and to read the refreshable Braille display for what is on the screen. A majority of my students in their schools, they all have access to an iPad. So we use a Focus 40 refreshable Braille display. It interacts with the iPad with VoiceOver. And I absolutely love this strategy because they are able to write Braille in a Pages document and edit it very seamlessly. They can use tools like spell check and listen to what they've written through the auditory feedback. And it's just been a really great tool. I think it's given my students a lot of confidence. And I was intimidated by it at first because I didn't know about it, but I really think that's one of our main jobs as a teacher of students with visual impairments is to kind of overcome that fear of some of the technology that we don't know and help learn for our students. I also put on here a QWERTY keyboard. I am very passionate about making sure that all of my students learn to type with correct fingering on a regular keyboard. I think this is important for students with low vision all the way up to students who have no vision. I think it's important just for efficiency. This is something that in my school district, they don't teach this to every child. So I have to take the time to make sure that my students are all getting instruction for keyboarding. I've found that students who have strong keyboarding skills are much more successful when we start to introduce the screen reading software on a laptop. A lot of my students use the JAWS software, and there's a lot of keyboard commands that come into play. And so the more confident they are with keyboarding skills, the better success they have with a screen reader. The next assistive tool that I have on here is a handheld monocular or a handheld telescope. And I have to admit that this is not usually my students' favorite tool, but I think this is incredibly important if I have a student with vision at all, and a student who is thinking about potentially driving one day. In the US, there's a lot of people with low vision that can drive using a bioptic and bioptic glasses, and a telescope is a prerequisite skill for that. But it also really gives our students a lot of independence in the community. I'm lucky enough where I work to be able to have a vehicle that's provided by the district that I can drive students in to go to the grocery store and use the telescope to look at the overhead signs, or go for a walk down the street and use it to see the street signs. So I love creating fun lessons for my students to use the telescope in a meaningful way. The last tool I have on here, but it's certainly not, this is not an exhaustive list of tools, but I love a video magnifier. Lately, we've been using one called Jupiter, which is provided through the American Printing House for the Blind, but it is a video magnifier that allows my students to see and customize the level of enlargement and color for items at a near range, and it also has a flip camera that helps them see things at a distance. So I know there's a variety of those out there, but I love using a video magnifier. I find it incredibly empowering for my students to be able to have access to items all throughout their classroom. I wanted to share just some of the things that I found to be helpful in promoting success with all of these devices, because there's a lot to learn. And I have a lot of students who kind of would rather not use some of their devices and kind of fit in, or maybe they're just not confident. So some of the things that I do, the first is I like to teach the skills with those devices one-on-one. So I love to have the student individually and work on that skill with the device before I take that skill into the classroom or community with the student. I find that once they have some confidence, they're more willing to use it in the classroom. I think also if we can make the lesson with that tool fun and relevant, then they may have more motivation and confidence in using it. So if I know that my student loves basketball, then maybe we're going to go to a basketball practice in the gym and use our telescope to look at the scoreboard. Or if our student really loves science, then maybe we'll use that video magnifier to look at something really interesting with the device, or search for it on our electronic Braille writer. So I really like to keep that in mind. Also, I like to keep the tools available in the classroom once I know my student's responsible to use it. I have a picture here of a cart that I use that has space for a lot of different devices, and it's on wheels. And something I do is have this cart in every classroom that my student goes to. So I'm lucky enough to have the ability to get the tools I need in multiples so that it's available for them whenever they need it. And lastly, I like to train my teachers and parents how to use the tools, because inevitably they are going to run into some difficulty, and it's really helpful if somebody is there to problem solve with them and help them have success with the tools. So that's kind of what I've got. I'm sure you guys have questions about some of the tools, and I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, I just wondering about Braille display. At what age or what grade that you introduce to them Braille display, and also is it iPad introduced to all students? Yeah,
Yes, believe it or not, in our district, kindergartners get are provided with an iPad device that they use this is for all students. So pretty early on, they have access to that. That was very helpful this year since we all needed those devices for virtual learning. But I found it really important to begin to teach those skills with voiceover really early for those students who need it. I don't believe I've introduced an electronic display until probably second or third grade for my students, mainly because the devices are pretty expensive and they take a bit of skill to be able to use independently. I may have worked with it with my student a little bit for some exposure before that, but probably not for functional use.
Okay, that's um, so just wondering, how about when you want to, do you have your own location where you can do all your work?
Yeah, so I know I shared this with you, Amy and Deanna. I work in a district and I'm an itinerant teacher. So I travel between about 10 different schools to see the students at their home campus. But I have one school that has provided a classroom for me that I store all of my supplies. And I also have a large embosser so that I'm able to produce the Braille that I need for my students that require Braille for their coursework. So I do have kind of a home base that I can keep all the things that I need and work in that space when I need to. It happens to be at the school where I have a few students that have quite a bit of time that I see them on a daily basis. So that's super convenient. And I also use that space if I need to work with that student one-on-one.
That's great. Because if not, it is really a hassle then.
Yes. I don't know. There's a lot of, and I'm very, very lucky. There's teachers I know that do not have a space, that have a little closet, or they just work out of their car. So I'm very grateful for that.
Okay. Thank you for explaining. Anything else?
Do you have any other questions, Cikgu Amy?
I think that's all from me. Thank you anyway for explaining and sharing to us.
Yes.
Okay, so actually I'm impressed that kindergarten students already have already introduced to use iPad. Yeah,
I know.
All right, so I hope perhaps in future in Malaysia we can also introduce as early as possible the iPad or anything accessibility tools to our young children. Okay, all right. Actually, I have a lecturer. So basically, my former lecturer, Mr. Rosley. Actually, he was in Western Michigan University for her master, and when he was there, he got his driving license. That's why when he came back here, so it's something like unusual for low vision people in Malaysia to drive car. So that's why no wonder. So he got the license in the state. All right. So
That's neat.
all right. I think that's all for the third segment.
Sorry, can I add on another one?
All right. Sure.
Talking about they can drive, especially those low vision. How about the is it Tesla very popular already among the totally blind? Totally blind people there.
You know, there's not a lot of use with the cars that drive themselves yet here. So I know it's coming. I think it would be really exciting, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Alright, okay. Demikian tadi ketiga-tiga segmen kita pada pagi ini. Before we proceed to our Q&A session, I want to let our speaker to have a coffee break while watching for snippet of our visually impaired children. Let's watch together.
Hi. Good. Hello, good day everyone. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera.
My name is Rahana Patricia.
My name is Aiman Amsha. My name is Ilaza. Arif, but people just call me Yang. My name is Rafiq Daniel bin Rizwan.
I am 12 years old.
I am 12 years old. I am Standard 6 student at PPKI SK Klang.
I am 11 years old. I study in Standard 5.
I am 7 years old and I am from Malaysia. Currently, I am in year 1 from SK Klang. I attend this school because the teachers are trained to teach people like me. I learn how to read and write Braille and use a white cane in school, which I call Stickle, by the way.
I am visually impaired. Thank you for your encourage and great sharing, madam. Sometimes we all need a few words of encouragement like this.
I want to say thank you for your sharing.
Thank you, Mrs. Chambers, for your time today. We are lucky to listen to your talk. Hope to meet you again soon. I would like to thank the panel for taking the time to share the knowledge to us. Alhamdulillah. We really appreciate.
Hope you have a nice day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you once again. Hashtag kita jaga kita.
Alright, that's all the video from our students. So actually we have 13 students overall from preschool to the highest level is standard 6. So most of them are in standard 6. Okay, we will go ahead and take some time for question now. Okay, I can see there are a few questions here. Okay, let's go to the first one. It's from Nur Hoslinda Chiman, and the question is, my son doesn't like holding tennis ball because of its fuzzy surface. As a parent, how do I build trust so that it is okay for him to hold that tennis ball? Okay, I repeat. My son doesn't like holding tennis ball because of its fuzzy surface. As a parent, how do I build trust? How do I build trust so that it is okay for him to hold that tennis ball?
What a great question. I do think that it's common for students to have textures that they might not enjoy. And I know as parents and teachers, we want our children to explore and be able to interact with all different types of objects and textures. I like the word that you used in terms of trust, because I do think that's an important piece, that we don't want to force our child to touch things that they don't want to. Some ideas I might have would be maybe to have minor and very short interactions with the ball rather than, having long sustained interactions to sort of build that tolerance. Maybe it's rolling the ball back and forth across a table, or hitting it with their hand at first, if that's something that he may tolerate, or finding objects that are similar and build up to that if he's able to do that.
All right, okay, thank you. I hope it's going all right, sorry. Okay, so we have the next question. It's from a teacher, Aizuddin from Aikurop, Dhaka. So the question is, what is your strategies or method with deaf-blind pupil and learning disabilities?
Another.
All right, okay, I repeat. What is your strategies or method with deaf-blind pupils and learning disabilities?
Another great question. I think there's so much there, and there's so much to learn. One of the big, and you know, obviously it depends on that child's abilities and you know, what kinds of things they're working on. But one of the things I found just in general is fostering a sense of coherence for that child. I think we all have to feel safe in order to learn and grow. And I think as teachers and parents, the more we can support that sense of coherence in terms of, I know where I am, what's going to happen next, and what to expect, I think our students will be more open to learning. And one of the ways that we can do that is by establishing some routines in our day in terms of our learning so that they do feel safe, and then providing a system to let them know what's coming next. So I love using a calendar system or a schedule that the child can have access to, whether that be through object symbols or those tactile symbols like we talked about, so that the child can really know by reading that schedule or calendar what is going to happen next, so that they're able to open up and feel confident to engage with you for learning. So I know there's a lot of different strategies, but I find that calendars and schedules are a great place to start.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So let's go to the next questions. Okay. Also from the same teacher, build up their cognitive first, or build up their self-confidence. Which one is better, or you have another approach? Build up their cognitive first, or build up their self-confidence. Which one is better, and do you have another approach? Thank you.
Ooh, come in with tricky questions. You know, I mean, it's probably a personal preference, or, you know, what that child is like. But I really think it's important to build that self-confidence, that self-determination, and also the relationship you have with the child, that they do trust you and that they want to work hard for you. So I think that's something I always do, is take the time to build the relationship with that child, that they know that they're loved and that it's a safe place to learn and grow and make mistakes, and that self-confidence will come and grow over time. And I find that really helps with all the other areas. So that's just my personal preference.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Next question is from Mrs. Ivy. She's a mother of 2 visually impaired boys. Okay. So the question is there any tactics in guiding low vision child in learning Braille at early age, as they could tend to use the eyesight they have in reading Braille? All right. So I repeat. Is there any tactics in guiding low vision child in learning Braille at early age, as they could tend to use the eyesight they have in reading Braille?
I run into this all the time with some of my learners who are dual media. And my preference is honestly not to fight it too much at an early age, and just embrace any opportunity I have for them to practice. I personally think there is value in understanding the code visually if they have vision. I think it can support their understanding of the code tactily. So if they're learning the letter and word combinations of the dots in Braille visually and tactily, I think there's benefit to that. So I think if you're able to have them, you know, look at the letter, or to say, play a game like, okay, let's close our eyes and feel the letter, and then open your eyes and see if you're right. So not making it an all or nothing, but a combination of both of those things. And then there's times when I really, really want my child, or I want to assess and kind of see if they are able to read without their vision. I use, we can play a fun game where we kind of take a box and we put the Braille inside the box, and they have to kind of put their hands inside to read. So it kind of blocks their vision and it kind of pushes them to use those tactile skills. The other things that you can do are just really to build up the tactile skills with or without the Braille. So playing games like that with objects or textures or tactile symbols that they can try to find ones that are the same, find ones that are different. I think building those tactile skills up simultaneously with the Braille code can help give them confidence for using their tactile skills when reading. But it's really common. I think that's something a lot of students with low vision will do when learning Braille.
All right, I think we are on the same page. That I agree with you that we have to encourage the children who still have their remaining eyesight. So we have to encourage them to use that to the max. Okay, so we have a question from Mrs. Hanan. Okay, the question is, how do you cater with the late Braille learner, the ones that previously cited and has been reading print for years? Are you going to start from the beginning, from pre-Braille, or you just go straight to teach Braille codes? Okay, I repeat. How do you cater with the late Braille learner, the ones that previously cited and has reading print for years? Are you going to start from the beginning, from pre-Braille, or you just go straight to teach Braille codes?
Great question. I think it a little bit depends on the student's tactile skills. So I do think that some assessment is important to see, where their skills are. If they are not able to discriminate, at all, then I do think that you probably need to start with some basic tactile discrimination exercises. If they are, I think you can build with the code. For me, I found that those older learners, some of the Braille materials are so basic that reading the stories aren't very motivating, that they don't like reading stuff that's at a lower level, even if it's difficult with the Braille. So something that I like to do is create things for them to read that are a little bit more interesting, even if it's me writing them a note or a joke or even just a story that might have basic words and letters in Braille, but that is something that's a little bit interesting to that child, because I don't want them to be reading pre-kindergarten level sentences if they're in middle school, for example. So I think it's important to make sure that we're keeping it fun and interesting, and also building the Braille skills where they're at.
All right. Okay, thank you. I think we have the last one here. Let me see. Okay. Okay, wow, we have a live question from one of our mainstream teachers. So let me see. Who are you? Who are you? Oh my God, okay. All right, okay. Assalamualaikum. Welcome to the chat room. This is one of my colleagues, Madam Fairuz binti Syukur. She is a mainstream teacher. So actually we are quite close together. One of the things why I really love my school, it is because the mainstream and the special education teacher, we can work together. We keep on supporting each other professionally and personally. Thank you. All right, so welcome Kak Fai. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Could you please unmute?
Okay, I'm here. Okay, can hear you.
Okay. I'm quite nervous to see you here. I don't know what you are going to ask. All right, okay.
Hi, Stacey.
Hi.
Can I proceed? Diana?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Stacey, my name is Fairuz. I'm one of the mainstream teachers, and I've been involved with the special education integration program with all the great teachers and great pupils for so many years. Most of it are more to outdoor activities, such as taking a tour, taking the pupils to the supermarket for a field trip, and the greatest is mount hiking. Yeah, we already climbed the highest mountain in Southeast Asia. So that's
Wow.
very memorable one, and the teachers are very great. Yeah, doing very great with the pupils. Now my question is, I need some sharing for you. How do you collaborate with the mainstream teachers for inclusive learning or for materials preparation? Thank you in advance. How do you
Yes.
collaborate?
So this is so important for our students. You know, it's the law here that our students have access to the materials that they need at the same time that other students have access to their materials. So it's important that I always educate the teachers I'm working with that law that we have here. And so in order to do that, I ask the teachers to provide the print lessons or the print handouts to me 1 week prior to when they plan to do the lesson. Because I have access to my own embosser, that I'm able to produce what they need in Braille or tactile graphics at the same time for that child in the class. So there's a lot of collaboration that goes on. Lately, we've gotten really good with our technology where we have a shared Google Drive, and teachers will put in the lessons that they plan to do there so that I can see it and then produce it for the child in real time. But it does take a lot of organization and communication from our classroom teachers. And so on behalf of your teachers, I know they're so grateful when that communication and collaboration happens, because I know it's extra work for those classroom teachers for sure.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, is that all? Kak Fai? Is that all?
Thank you very much, Stacy.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right, and thanks, Kak Fai. I love you so much, and okay, I want to take this opportunity to thank. I want to thank all my mainstream colleagues for all your supports. I have been in SK Klang for almost 11 years, so I know how's the situations there. Really supportive surroundings. I'm really grateful that I have been here. Okay, so thanks a lot for all your supports. We couldn't ask for more. Okay.
We are doing great also. You know. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. It looks like we have covered all the questions. Stacy, is there anything else you want to cover before wrap up?
Not necessarily. I did see a question come through. I don't know. It popped up on my screen a couple times. I'm not sure if somebody was asking about the technology replacing Braille in the future. And I do think that's something I'd like to address from my perspective. It's something that we're asked a lot, I think, as a Braille teacher, you know, from a parent or other teachers in the schools, wondering, is it worth the time to teach Braille? Don't they have technology for that? And the biggest answer I have is that a lot of the Braille technology requires understanding of the code. And so I really believe that the Braille and the technology work together, and that's what will provide the opportunity for independence. It's just really important in order to particularly write, to be able to be hands-on with those items, to know how the word is spelled, how to edit the word that you're trying to write, and the grammar punctuation involved is just, it's really a hands-on experience, whether it's in print or in Braille. And so I am so excited about all the opportunities for technology, but I'm a passionate believer in Braille, and I think those two things go together. So I did want to address that question that popped up. But again, I'm just so thankful. I love that we have established this relationship, and I am so excited to share and to learn. And that video of your students is just amazing. I love that you're kind of initiating this opportunity for collaboration, like you said, across the borders, because I think anything that we can learn from one another is just going to help support our students and parents. So I'm so thankful you asked me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here.
All right, so same goes to me. I'm representing all my colleagues. We are so grateful to have you here. Actually, this is our first time inviting a teacher from abroad. So perhaps in future we could have another sessions, perhaps with other teachers. Okay. So we are getting close to the end of our time together. Okay, so what I can say here, in Braille learning, we need to go step by step, starting with Braille readiness before we can get them to read that small Braille symbols. One of the important steps, like our guest has shared before, we need to enhance their sensory motor development. Next, when it's time to read the real Braille, it's more than memorizing the Braille codes. To make Braille reading more efficient, we need to emphasize on the skills such as attitude development, motivation, mechanical skills, hand movement, and comprehension skills. And now, learning materials for the blind are no longer restricted on paper. There are numbers of tools invented to cater their needs in this 21st century. Not only to be used inside the classroom, it also can be used for independent learning. So in a nutshell, what I can say is, there are still some missing puzzles in the educations for the visually impaired children in Malaysia. However, I'm really positive that with the active and more structured partnership in between the stakeholders, between the teachers, the parents, and others, we can fill in the gap from time to time. Okay, so I would like to thank again to our speaker. Terima kasih. You have been wonderful, and you have been really wonderful and supportive since the first time I reached for you. I hope that we could keep in touch and keep on uplifting each other. Besides that, I would like to apologize if there are any mistake from me and my colleagues. They are definitely unintended, if any. So I also have acknowledgement for all my colleagues who have been working hard to this point to make this session a reality, and inshallah it could benefit others. To all the attendees, thanks again for joining us, and see you inshallah there will be next time. That's all. Good day. Saya akhiri majlis ini dengan wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.